All right, hello everyone. We're gonna get started. My name's Juliet. I'm one of the members on the BO to CEU board, and I'm here to introduce Dr. Dapice. Dr. Dapice found occupational therapy via her volunteerism, bringing pets to nursing homes. She has been practicing, researching, and teaching animal-assisted interventions ever since. She practiced canine-assisted occupational therapy with facility dog norm at Perkins School for the Blind and currently participates in dog therapy dog visits with her certified therapy dog Lincoln. Dr. Dapice has OT practice experience across the lifespan in acute care, skilled nursing, and educational settings. And I'll let her take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Hello, thank you so much for being here, virtual and in person. I really appreciate it. And my name is really difficult to pronounce, so I'm just going to tell you it's Dapice, which is, there's no problems, but my name is Jennie Dapice. So it's really nice to meet you all. This is Lincoln, and Juliet, will you tell me if I'm in the wrong place, if I'm not on the screen? No, I can thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm usually a mover and shaker, so I'll try to stay still. But Lincoln is here, not really because he's not totally involved in the presentation, because I knew it was going to be also virtual, and I felt bad for those people who couldn't be here in person. But you are welcome to come up and visit him before and after, maybe even a little bit in the middle. So I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to talk a little bit about canine-assisted occupational therapy in educational settings. And it's so great to see all of you. I'm so excited. So many familiar faces, and hopefully you'll learn something, and hopefully this will be educational for everybody. Okay, so how do I? There we go. Great. Cool. So I have a lot of knowledge in this area, and it's hard for me to cut down to what I wanted to tell you all. But I'm hoping to keep it OT focused and also keep it relevant to you. Since Lincoln is only 2.5 and he's still in training, so I might have to take some time to manage him, but hopefully he'll be a good boy. Today I want to identify and define terms, identify resources for you for professional development and liability insurance in case you're interested in getting into this line of work, and identify some models for incorporation of therapy dogs into educational settings. I'm lucky to have some experience in this topic, so I'll leave that balance. So my name is Jennie Dapice, and I'm an OT professor here at the University of New England. I'm lucky enough to work here, and I've actually taught in this classroom, so it's really familiar. And I also work at the University of Southern Maine. I teach there sometimes, and I'm on some OTD capstone committees. I'm a pediatric OT. I'm board certified in pediatrics, and I have 12 years in educational settings, school-based settings, basically. I've been involved in human-animal interaction throughout that time. As Juliet said, I came to OT actually because I was volunteering with an animal that I had adopted an animal. He loved people so much that I figured it would be good to share him. And so I started visiting nursing homes. And because when I was doing that, the person who was kind of organizing our visits was an occupational therapist, I thought, that sounds like something I want to do. So I was actually in criminology, switched gears totally, and went into occupational therapy. And I'm really thankful and lucky to be here at this point in my career. And so I've been a volunteer throughout, a researcher, an educator, and a practitioner. And I've kind of run the gamut. My master's thesis was about service dogs in the OT community. I found that occupational therapists thought that service dogs improved independence, but that they did not recommend service dogs for their clients. So that was an interesting one. That was a long time ago. And I feel like things have shifted since I started. That was a long time ago. Everybody. And then I did my PhD at Virginia Commonwealth, and I looked at children with developmental disabilities, and incorporated my dog into their therapy sessions, and looked at playfulness and participation. So, and I've also worked at Canine Companions. I'm a volunteer for Canine Companions. I'm a faculty fellow at the Tufts Center for Animals and Public Policy. I'm on the board of Elder Pet, which is a pet partners community organization, and they help seniors to kind of manage mostly the financial requirements of having a pet, because a lot of times that is a really important thing to seniors in their homes. And I'm a proud member of the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professional. This field is very broad, right? Interdisciplinary. And so I've worked with a lot of people in my career who are not occupational therapists, but I'm really excited to be talking to you as occupational therapists, because I've talked to I went and spoke at MESCA, which is the School Counselor Association, and I've spoken at other conferences, but it's exciting to have a room full of people who speak the occupational language. So I'm really thankful for that. But because of that, since I know you all have an amazing occupational background, I might talk a little bit more about the kind of the logistics of animal assisted interventions, because I feel like that's the part that maybe you don't know, right? You all have the occupational background, and I'm going to try to, of course, connect the two. But as I was reflecting on this morning, I thought I didn't write occupation in my slideshow enough, because when my students, I was like, remember to center occupation, remember to center occupation. But I reflected that part of that reason is that I know that you come to this with a really great occupational background. So hopefully this will be helpful for you. Okay, so this is Lincoln. He's my certified therapy dog, and he is, although he's officially certified, he's still in training, I believe. He's you can tell, he is a 2.5-year-old Labrador Golden Retriever mix. He was bred to be a service dog, but failed, or was released, they call it, because he likes, his pre-drive is a little bit higher than would be manageable for someone with a disability. So he's great, and he's a very good therapy dog. However, he's also still a work in progress, I would say. So he was adopted as a therapy dog prospect from Canine Companions, which is the first and largest service dog training organization in the United States. He loves people, he loves deep pressure, he loves dog toys. He loves dog toys to his detriment, unfortunately. And he loves food, which is why he won't really, sometimes he won't do anything unless I have food. So you might see me, I'm like, the other day I reflected, I don't know, maybe someone walked into my office and I had dog treats on my desk, but even though Lincoln doesn't come to work, I thought, this is my life now. I have dog treats wherever I go. So thanks for being here. And if afterwards you have any questions, I couldn't fit there's so much extra that I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't fit it on here. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the middle of this presentation or afterwards, because I'm happy to talk about this. This is as my colleagues know, this is kind of like my passion, and I love to talk about it. So talking about terminology, unfortunately or fortunately, the field has, has a lot of different terminology. It's very difficult to say, right? Animal assisted interventions. I was, not necessarily the easiest thing to say, but we try to have a great uniform terminology that extends across settings. But even in the field, there's been some kind of discussion and disagreement. So I consider what I do animal assisted interventions or animal assisted services, and there are two different camps. But I think they both kind of describe all types of services that incorporate animals for the benefit of humans, right? So this is excluding assistance and service animals. So some of you before when I was walking around with Norm with Linky before, you said, can I pet him? And I said yes. And the reason for that is because he's a therapy dog. His job is to visit with you all, right? A service dog would be to help one person, and generally service dogs you're not allowed to pet them. Sometimes the service dog handler will allow you, but in general with service dogs you should not go out to them and pet them right away. But for Link, whose job it is to visit with people, it's okay. You see how much he loves people. He loves food. And he sometimes, like the last time I gave a talk with him, I talked for 45 minutes, and then at the 45-minute mark, he lay down and put his head on my foot. So he's good at, he's really good at like mellowing out, but not for a little while. So I think he also, as you know, dogs pick up on our emotions, and so I think he's probably picking up on my emotions too. But so under the term animal assisted interventions, we have animal assisted activities, animal assisted therapy, and animal assisted education. And broadly, animal assisted activities are much less formal, right? Lincoln is walking up to you and visiting with you. That's an animal assisted activity, right? Animal assisted therapy is where we are incorporating him into goal directed therapy, where if we were incorporating him into our OT treatment, where the goal is to improve certain goals, then that would be considered our animal assisted therapy. And animal assisted education is similar, but more school-based incorporation of animals to support achievement of educational goals and objectives. And I would add to improve it, the occupation of education. So, but note that it's not pet therapy. The term pet therapy was kind of given up a while ago because it sounds like you're giving therapy to an animal. It could be understood as like, the animal needs therapy, which that is a thing, but not what I'm talking about here. So I try not to use the term pet therapy, but I also slip. So the other thing I didn't say, which I think is important to note that is that we're not using the animals in this work. We're incorporating them, or we are they're our therapeutic partner, right? So even though I say to students, just like I use a therapy ball, I might incorporate my dog. It's a type of intervention. It's a way to get my clients to do what I want them to do, or to achieve their goals, right? I don't like to say the word use, because I feel like it's not it's not really what's happening, right? I'm incorporating the animal into my practice, and there's a reason for that, right? So I'll try not to say that, but again, I might slip up. Okay, so more terminology. Education, this is kind of like by the animal. It's a similar thing, but education or school support dog is a canine working in an educational setting, which is engaged in goal-directed structured programs or services with outcomes that are educational or developmental in nature. A visiting dog is more like a pet dog who is suitable for public visitation with their human volunteer handler. So they would be visiting for the enjoyment and well-being of communities, right? So we do have people who are professionals who incorporate a dog into their practice or their educational, right? But you also have volunteers who come as visitors, and I'll show you kind of the models that we use for that. There are different terms for therapy dogs that are incorporated into practice and occupational therapy practice and education. So a therapy dog is a canine who's included in the work, right? But it can be generally structured or goal-directed treatment or animal-assisted activities. But therapy dogs have to pass basic training and veterinary screening, but they're not highly task trained. So they generally work 2 hours per day, and that is Lincoln to a T, right? He's not totally task trained. I would love for him to lie down, sit there for 30 minutes while I talk to you, or 40 minutes, and he's not going to do that. He's great at visiting people. He will not hurt anybody. He would not ever hurt anybody on purpose, right? He is a little bit clumsy, so that's why I, as a handler, have to manage, his behaviors and everything. But he would never hurt anybody on purpose, and he's not highly task trained. A facility dog is what I had with Norm, when I worked at Perkins School for the Blind, and that is more of a dog who's highly trained. They have basically received the service dog training, and then they're matched with a person in a specific facility. Sorry. So there are facility dogs in hospitals and schools and universities, all different types of things. But facility dogs are excellent because they're specifically generally chosen for that population, chosen for that practitioner. So that makes it a little bit easier because they're 100% suitable, right? And that makes a big difference, right? As when I worked at Perkins School for the Blind, my students did not know a lot about animals because you learn a lot about animals from seeing them. And so the dog that I received for Perkins School for the Blind was pretty mellow and not very squirrely, right? Because the students had to learn about him from touching him. So he was specifically chosen and individually excellent for that population. So I kept this intentionally broad when I proposed this talk, and that was partly because there's a lot of variety in where dogs go and where dogs can help, and there's different research and different opportunities, but right now I'm in a post-secondary situation where I'm working now, and I know that dogs can help there. And also I've seen research about preschools, and I've worked in K-12 schools, and I've seen the impact of animals there. So those are that's why I kept it broad. I didn't want to only see school-based people. I didn't want to only see academia. And I wanted to show you the range of this. So by post-secondary or tertiary, I mean, vocational schools, continuing education programs, life skills programs, trade schools, universities. So really, this is kind of like education across the lifespan, not just K through 12. So who can benefit from canine-assisted interventions? General education students can benefit. Children with disabilities, preschool-age children, elementary-age children, adolescents, college students, graduate students, animals. The animals often benefit, right? The dog often benefits from canine-assisted interventions. Teachers and faculty can benefit from canine-assisted interventions in that, right? It can be a stress relief tool for faculty. It can be a stress relief tool for teachers. And administrators can benefit too, and school personnel also. There's research out there. I'll show you some of it. I can't go through all of it, but some of the research that I'm really excited about is that having an animal, having a facility dog, or having a dog visit the school improves school climate. And now that's in K-12 schools. But I think that, in a world where teaching is hard and being schools, education, general education, special education, it's all hard. I've been there. I think that, improving school climate is a huge thing, and I think it can be really beneficial. So I do want to focus on, just point out that it's not just our clients, it's not just the students at the school that will benefit, but generally the whole community. And that being said, I have a lot of contacts who have animals in the school setting, and they've told me that even the people who are allergic, or even the people who can't interact with the dog, feel like they benefit from having the dog present, because they notice it in other people. They notice the difference in other people when they visit the dog. So, I'll talk a little bit about allergies in this presentation, but I did also want to bring that up. It's not just the people who are interacting with the dog one-to-one, right? It can be also other people can benefit, and we got to get that into the literature, but haven't done that yet. Okay, so now settings and populations. I want to talk, if you guys can scan this, and I want to hear where you are thinking about. Like, you don't have to have it all set. Nobody's gonna, don't worry about this, but if you have an idea of where you might ever want to implement a therapy dog or have a therapy dog in your practice, I'd love to hear about it. Okay, let's see. Where's my, so I have a link here. Hopefully it'll work. Let's see. I hope that didn't work. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to look at the results here. I have it here. Maybe it was just a PowerPoint or something, but okay, so I'm looking at the results. Let's see what we can find here. Nice. Hopefully people online can do this too. I did provide the slides, so let's see what you're saying. What settings? I'm gonna click on that. What settings are you finding? It says the options are. Is it working for you? The link? Oh, it's working for good. Preschool, elementary school, middle and high school, post-secondary. I want to hear from you what you're looking at. Looks like 100% post-secondary university. All right, well, that's okay. Well, that's great. That's great. I'm going to talk a little bit about all of the settings. But, how many participants? It doesn't tell me how many participants, but okay. So a lot of you hopefully are interested in implementing therapy dogs in post-secondary interventions, and that's great. We'll talk a little bit about all the different settings. Okay, so just a little bit about impact. I'm not here to kind of convince you that it works, but because I want to talk more about the models and how to implement it. But there is research that shows that having a dog present during occupational therapy sessions, or having a dog present in educational settings, is beneficial. A couple of quick slides about that. This is a study by Windsor, who in 2022, who found that a trained therapy dog that was present during the OT treatment session improved children's focus. They participated in therapist-directed table-based treatment activities, and they were significantly more focused or demonstrated less off-task behavior when the dog was present. So the canine-assisted intervention improved focus, which I think that's really interesting, because when sometimes in my experience, when I bring a dog in, people are less interested in listening to me, right? They want to see, what is the dog doing? I want to interact with the dog. What's going on? I thought that was great. So that was and that was just so you know, that was a public preschool, special education and general education. They're students age 3 to 5. Okay, and here's the impact from K to 12, and this is not OT literature, because these are systematic reviews, so they're not all OT. I would say the literature in OT is lacking in terms of the impact of therapy dogs or dog presence in K to 12 education, and hopefully we can, if you want to work together with me to change that, I would love to do that. But there's this, I wanted to just highlight these two studies. A systematic review of 25 studies found significant benefits to students from having animals in general education. There were specific improvements in cognitive behavior, emotional stability, social functioning, social emotional behavior, and they found physiological responses, positive physiological responses. This study had 21 dogs, 1 rabbit, and 3 guinea pigs. Right, so I think, dogs are the most common, right? Dogs to me are the most accessible, but all animals, I believe, are impactful, can be impactful. The next one is a systematic review of 18 studies, which identified the effects of the presence of the dog in special education settings. And these outcomes included no negative effects, right? I find that when I ask to bring a dog, a lot of people say no. And why do they say no? A lot of times there are liability concerns, right? There are concerns about, what it's going to look like. Is the dog going to bite somebody? Is there going to be allergy concerns? What is it going to look like? But this study of 18 studies found no negative effects. They found reduced physiological stresses in challenging situations. So the students had decreased stress hormone cortisol. They had increased motivation and adherence to instructions. I have seen that across the board in my students when I've incorporated a dog. It promoted concentration, positive mood and motivation, counteracted fear and stress, created a beneficial social and learning environment, right? Which if you have been, anyone who's been in K through 12 education knows that, you know, with some of the tragedies that have happened in schools, you know, cell phones, just the school environment is very difficult and very stressful for students and I would say teachers alike. So I think this is a great way to impact that in a positive way. But it is important to note that these studies vary greatly in terms of the animal that was incorporated, the implementation, the location, the population, and the specific intervention, right? So these are not specifically OT based, but when you think about it, you know, some of these things, right? Reducing physiological stress, that's definitely going to help improve occupational performance, right? There's some of these things that we can obviously translate to our work, right? Okay, a post-secondary impact. Did Chris leave? I think Chris Winston left, but she was involved in this study. It was in the American Journal of Occupational Therapy, and it was an our RCT, which looked at canine assisted activities versus other stress relief activities without a dog presence. They had two different groups of 6 weeks, 35 minutes each session. And the health science graduate students that were in the treatment group had significantly higher self-reports of quality of life and reduced anxiety. There was no significant difference in their occupational performance or their adjustment to their student role, but overall the canine assisted interventions supported student well-being, and this is in a group of health sciences graduate students. So, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm on the edge of occupational therapy, right? As a practitioner, I don't, you know, like incorporating animals, but this was really exciting to have an article published in Asia that was a randomized control trial about health science graduate students, right? And of course, this is not like there's no occupational therapy happening here, right? But this is health science graduate students, which is our future, right? So I think this was just a really important study to pull up to show you all, and so hopefully you know there'll be more to come for sure. But so I've worked in this field for quite a while, and some of the impacts that I've seen, and I think are really important to bring up to you. The right therapy animal can both participate in therapeutic interventions like bowling when the pins represent emotions, and they can provide deep sensory pressure and physical comfort to students. Unconditional acceptance and rapport with students who struggle to connect with school personnel or peers. A neutral conversation opportunity for extremely shy peers or peers who are in conflict. An opportunity for students to care for the dog or the animal, you know, grooming it or baking cookies. The intervention of taking care of the dog can boost self-esteem and confidence. Interacting with the dog can be a stress relief mechanism for overworked educators and administrators whose wellness can trickle down to student wellness. It can improve attendance by encouraging student presence and participation in school activities. I told you that my dissertation research was about participation, and I found that the presence of an animal increased participation in my students with developmental disabilities. And definitely there are students out in the world who they say, you know, they don't want to come to therapy, but then if the dog is going to be there, they're willing to come to therapy. I can tell you, you know, afterwards, I can tell you all sorts of ways that the animal had helped me incorporate, you know, that helped me, you know, help my students achieve their IEP goals. This is a picture of a student in a high school setting, lying on the floor with a dog. And I think it's really important to see because, you know, dogs don't say, you know, you need deep pressure, I'm going to give it to you, right? Dogs don't, you know, there's no therapist involved in that. Like there doesn't have to be an OT involved saying, you know, if you need deep pressure, this dog will provide it. But that's one of the things that I've seen that really was impactful. You know, dogs provide deep pressure when students need it. They provide physical comfort, that kind of thing. And I think that's something, especially during COVID, that I saw was needed in student populations. So it might not be an OT specific goal, but it was definitely an impact that I noticed, and it's right up our alley. Okay. So I gave you a little bit of like background about the impact and, you know, a lot of information about terminology, but how do you do this? Like what, you know, how do we incorporate a dog into our educational settings? we would invite a volunteer handler. You can invite a volunteer handler to your school. This is called the diamond model. You can see that this involves the client, a volunteer handler, the therapist, and an animal, right? So it should say that a therapy practitioner, because we love her. It can be a CODA or an OTR. This is the quickest method of incorporating animals into your setting, right? It's of low cost or no cost to the educational institution because the volunteer who's coming in to give their time. And those are the positives, right? It's if you are working in an educational setting and next week you wanted to incorporate an animal into your setting, you could contact some of the organizations that I have their names at the end of the slideshow, and you could get an animal probably to come in soon to visit and to incorporate into your therapy session. The volunteer handler has to complete the background check and be present during needed sessions, which is okay for some models, but not for others, right? Sometimes it's not appropriate to have a volunteer in your therapy session, right? No, that's not gonna last very long, but we'll try it. Normally I wouldn't drop the leash, but I have to be over here for the camera, so okay. This model requires coordination with the handler for arranging specific visit times, which can be difficult, right? You're at the mercy of the volunteer's availability. The animal's only present when the handler is available, so approximately 2 hours generally are the limits to visit times. And the other thing about this is that this is not an animal that's specifically chosen for your population or for your setting, right? But it is definitely a way, a pretty easily accessible way to get animals into your therapeutic environment or your educational environment. So I have, my recommendations are to introduce the team into your setting slowly. I would try to meet the animal and the handler team prior to the first session or prior to when I'm incorporating them into my OT practice. I would invite them to the school first when the students are not present to make sure that I thought it was a good match. Generally, volunteer handlers have been screened and trained, the dogs are trained and well behaved, but not always, right? So you want to make sure that before you introduce them to a client that the handler and team are ready and that you think they're appropriate. So some resources to find volunteer handlers are pet partners. Pet partners actually basically establish the field of animal assisted interventions, and they have a lot of great volunteers across the country. The Alliance of Therapy Dogs is a good one, and Canine Companions is a good one. I can't believe he's doing this. He did not. This is really hard for me to believe, but it's wonderful. So this is really good. For those of you who are on Zoom, he's actually lying on his blanket that he's supposed to be lying on and not moving. And that's what I tried to get him to do earlier, and he wouldn't do it. So it's very exciting. Pathways to pursue therapy certification with your pet. Let's say you have a pet at home and you want to incorporate it into your therapy practice, and you think it might be appropriate for this work. This is your path, right? This is called the triangle model, and at the bottom you can see you can have the therapist is the same as the handler, right? So the practitioner is also the handler, and so then you have the animal and the client. Did somebody have a question? Yes.
Yeah, just like that one slide. Do you feel that practitioners in school setting feel like this is an option to reach out to these places?
Yeah.
I think their job is always never with the person, but to themselves. And I was curious, teachers or OT practitioners would know about the options.
Yep. So I'm going to repeat the question first. Somebody in our audience here was asking, do I think that either practitioners or teachers know that this is available, to them as a tool to incorporate into their either teaching or their therapy? And my answer is a lot of times no, and that's part of the reason I'm here. I want. There are plenty of dogs in the state of Maine that are therapy dogs, and so I'm hoping to increase the availability too. But no, unfortunately, I think that it is somehow there's not a lot of information about animals in schools, and I'm hoping to change that. But this is a start, so start spreading the word. Great. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. So another pathway, let's say you have a pet at home, you think who is I call it affiliative in nature, so it likes people, right? with an appropriate temperament, this can be fairly quick. It still takes a little while, but it's, you know, a process of basically this is, you know, you and the animal getting certified. So it's of low cost or no cost to the school or the counselor or the therapist or the therapy practitioner, as the animal's already a pet, right? You're already paying the vet bills. You're already doing this. But the animal, and the negatives are that the animal is only at school when the handler or OT is available. And therapy animals have a short limit of recommended work per day, approximately 2 hours of active work. So that makes it a little bit difficult for you, perhaps, as a therapist. Oh, see, I told you. Maybe I'll have it sit over here for a minute. But this requires you to purchase additional liability insurance. It's often an umbrella policy attached to your homeowner's insurance to protect you and the school from liability. And I will show you at the end, I have resources for how to get that umbrella liability insurance. So for these recommendations, I consider your current home pet. Does it enjoy interacting with people? Does it mind transportation, right? If your dog does not like to get in the car, does not like to go to school, then that's not going to be a good thing for, you know, and a good opportunity for your dog. Does it enjoy interacting with people? Does it have the required training, or do you have enough time to care for an animal during your normal work hours, right? That's one of the hardest things I would say about incorporating a therapy animal into your work, is that if it's your own animal, you have to both do your job and also take care of the pet, right, at the same time. Now it's possible. I'm standing up here saying it's possible, but it's also can be challenging. And so resources to find therapy animal certification opportunities for your own animal are the American Kennel Club. They have a list of therapy dog organizations, but Pet Partners and Alliance of Therapy Dogs are the most common, the most well-known organizations. And Canine Companions is not on there because they only certify their own dogs. So they're only the dogs that are released from their program, but I can help you if you're interested in that route. So if you have a dog or an animal, Pet Partners does do other animals. They certify, I think there's like eight different breeds, including llamas and alpacas and birds. So it can be really exciting. It's not just, it can be more broad than dogs, but to me, dogs are the most accessible. So, but I'm happy to talk about this afterwards if you have a pet at home who you're interested in incorporating. So the other pathway is to acquire an animal, right? Let's say you're like, this is going to work for my students. My administrator is on board. Let's do this. Then you'd have to, you get to choose a type of animal, right? Size or breed, right? But this is never guaranteed that the temperament is going to be good for therapy work. I like to tell people, if when I was 2 years old, someone had said, she's going to have to be a brain surgeon, right? That would not work out very well. So same with therapy dogs. Not all therapy dogs have the nature, not all dogs have the nature to be therapy dogs. And if you get a dog thinking it's going to be a therapy dog, a lot of times it won't be appropriate, right? It won't be perfect. It won't be the right match. And I think the right match is really important. And, you know, it's essential for working. So I don't always recommend this one, right? But I also think, you know, sometimes people don't have an option. And so I'm hoping that eventually there will be a shelter to therapy dog pipeline. You know, I feel like that's something I'm really excited about, and I'm really trying to figure out how to you know, support that. But right now, you know, I know a lot of people are buying doodles, which there's nothing wrong with buying a doodle, but sometimes not all doodles are appropriate for this work, and it's really hard to find one that is. So this can be a high cost, right, to purchase or train these animals, right? A purebred animal is really expensive, and training is really expensive. The timeline can be very long. There's often a waiting list for breeders, especially reputable breeders. The animal has to mature. Most organizations require a 1 year minimum age for therapy dogs, and they require a bonding period, generally a six month to 1 year bonding period. And that's because if you're working with an animal who's, you know, and incorporating them into your practice, you're going to need to know the signs of stress in that animal. So you can't just bring in an animal, you know, get an animal one day and bring it into class the next day. You can tell we're still learning to work together. I've had him for almost a year, and we're still not ready. I mean, I brought him into certain situations where I know, where I like are very predictable, and I know what it will be like. But I'm still kind of limiting us and where we go, because I don't know it very well yet. I feel like I don't know it very well yet. So for this one, I would recommend you consider your lifestyle or feasibility, right? Some people have family reasons they can't have dogs. Some people have, or, you know, reasons they need a dog, right? And so those can all be good. If you do acquire an animal, you can ask whether the animal has the aptitude to do therapy work. Speak to a trainer or the foster parent who may know the animal well. If this is a puppy, you don't necessarily know what the puppy will mature to, right? But if possible, you can ask a trainer to do a basic temperament test to determine whether the animal has the aptitude to be a therapy animal. But even though the trainer says it has the aptitude, it still might not. It's not a guarantee, right? And I think one of the things that I've done in the past is fostering dogs, and that's a really good way because you see them in the home, you see how they interact with people. Sometimes you can see whether you think they might have the aptitude. Again, it's not a guarantee, but it's an option. And I wish I had a more guaranteed way to acquire a therapy animal, but I would say there's not. Also, Assistance Dogs International has a member search page, and they do have some organizations that provide facility dogs to, occupational therapy practitioners, to SLPs, to all different types of professionals. Petfinder.com is the place for adoptable small animals. I recommend them. But again, if you haven't met the animal, I don't recommend acquiring it. Although I think it's a lot easier to find a therapy bunny or a guinea pig because the size makes it a little bit different, right? You still want to make sure that they're affiliated, and so you can't guarantee that, but there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. Let's see. Okay, so roles when conducting canine-assisted occupational therapy. The OT needs to ensure the safety of students, animal, and personnel, right? So they need to facilitate the human-animal interaction for services based on the established goals. And that can be really difficult if you're trying to do your job and facilitate a therapy session, then to also incorporate an animal into the situation, maybe a volunteer into the situation. When I was practicing with Norm at Perkins School for the Blind, I had a lot of students who had negative behaviors or aggressive behaviors. And so I would make sure that I didn't incorporate a student if I thought they were going to hurt the dog, right? Obviously I have to protect the dog. I also didn't want have any situation where I couldn't handle it, to have both the dog and the student there. So sometimes I would get an educational technician or a paraprofessional to come with me in that session if I thought that I needed it. And they're usually excited to come because they want to be with the dog too, but it doesn't always happen. And there's not always the time and stuff like that. But it's definitely, personnel is definitely an issue in this, both personnel in terms of like the number of people in the session, and also personnel in terms of, I as an occupational therapist have to do my role and also additionally have to care for this animal. So it can be a challenge. Educational and nursing staff, their roles are to identify precautions and contraindications, right? Facilitate safety, maintain health precautions, support students in interacting with animals, right? You'll probably be working with either faculty or teachers, that kind of thing, and that's an important role for them to play, right? They know their students best, and if you're a support person who's bringing, just like you would do, I don't know, a whole classroom intervention, you might be doing a whole classroom intervention with your therapy animal, that kind of thing. So your teacher would be, your best advocate in knowing the students. And animal handler volunteers would maintain health precautions, support their own animal, and facilitate the interaction between the students and the animal. And that's, obviously the therapy practitioner is doing a lot of the facilitation, but since the animal handler volunteer knows their animal the best, they might be able to say, right now, Link, is distracted. Can you, stand over there and get a dog toy, and then he'll come over to you, or that kind of thing. So just because the handler knows their animal best, sometimes that they need to be in part of the intervention. That's actually a nice thing sometimes to have a volunteer there with you. Okay, so requirements. Okay, I skipped one today. No, okay, so requirements. Liability insurance is the #1 thing that it's a requirement for therapy animal work. You do not want to be opening yourself up for anything. This dog is generally pretty predictable, but still, you never know. And so the organizations that certify volunteer handlers provide liability insurance to their volunteer handlers, but they do not provide liability insurance to people who are working with the animal. So as an OT practitioner, you would need to get additional liability insurance if you wanted to work with a therapy dog in your practice. Okay. You need a safe, separate space for the dog to rest, which can be a crate under the desk, blanket in the corner, just somewhere for the animal to get away. If you're working with the animal and you have to work the whole day and the animal can only be incorporated for a couple hours, then this is something that you need. Frequent grooming for appearance and health. So this is something that hopefully you're doing already with your pet, or if you have a dog, that's something that you have to do anyway, but definitely something that takes a lot of time and energy and sometimes money. Canine bio and toileting breaks are really important, and an emergency plan, right? If there's a lockdown, if there's this fire drill, if there's that kind of thing, and you're not in the same, if the dog is in your office, you need to figure out an emergency plan for what might happen, because to make sure that the animal's safe. And you might have a different role, right? You might be helping students to get out of the building, and what happens to the dog. So important to have an emergency plan. So some requirements, right, for this work. Canine and handler have to have an established bond. The canine has to have an aptitude for therapy work and is over 1 year. The aptitude for therapy work means to me is an affiliate of nature. Now, you can tell that Lincoln is not the most friendly dog that I've ever met. Like, I had other dogs that would just, mush into people and stay there for hours. He is excited about people. He loves them. He really likes to sit on laps, but he has certain characteristics that maybe don't make him the best, the most affiliative dog. But he definitely likes people, and in the right setting, he'll be an awesome therapy dog. Like, I think if he's invited, I would bring him into my office, and I think once he knows the lay of the land, he would be a lot less interested in what is going on in the exterior. He has FOMO. So in this room, he wants to go smell everything in every corner. But if he's in a setting where he's been before, he's already had a chance to check out the room, then a student comes to visit with him, he'll be great, right? So different therapy animals, I would say, have different, abilities and are great for different environments. And so that's something to think about. So, even if you don't have an animal who you think is like, definitely, this is going to work out, I would, consider it. Sometimes the animal is also mature. I have friends who, when the dog was 2 years old, they thought this dog will never be a therapy animal. And then by the age of 4, the dog had mellowed out and was kind of different. It seemed interested in interacting, or, sometimes you have children who are excited about playing fetch, and the dog is great at fetch. So, depending on your setting and what you're looking at, the dog can mature into that, or you can, or your population might change the students that you're working with. The certification requirements depend on the species. That's basically like a throwback to that there are other animals that can be certified, but also different organizations require different things, right? But basically, all the certification organizations require healthy animals, healthy weight, that they've been vaccinated, they've done parasite testing, no raw diets. You cannot feed a therapy dog a raw diet because of the possibility of transfer of that of salmonella, I think it is, to humans, right? So there is a lot of science about zoonoses, which is the transfer of disease from animal to humans and human to animals, but it's not been found to be a huge issue in animal-assisted therapy, and that's proven by the point that there are a lot of dogs and facility dogs in hospitals and that kind of thing, and they haven't shown it to be a problem. So temperament testing and obedience testing are required for certification as a therapy dog, and the animal and the handler has to be tested together, so the team gets certified, not just the dog. It is important, as I said, that the animal and the handler work together. I think it's important also to have maybe another person in the environment who knows the dog, so that maybe for your emergency plan, if there's something that happens and and I'm not there, somebody else could be able to take the dog out or something like that. But in general, you do have one primary handler. So this is just something, the field is really important, right? If you don't have a healthy animal, if you're not worried about your animal's health, then your interventions are not going to be as successful. So this is kind of a shift in the field, I would say, since I've been working in it. You can't necessarily, I'm not necessarily demonstrating the best dog handling behavior today, but I would say that I'm a lot better when I'm with clients. And also, I told you that he's still in training down. Nice job, stay. Sorry about that. But all canine assisted interventions should consider canine health as a primary concern, right? You can't do this work without having a healthy animal. Training and certification organizations require positive training cues rather than negative reinforcement. You want to ensure that the dog is interested in the interaction by watching for signs of stress, fidgeting, other signs, turning away, tail tucked, head down. I think Lincoln is doing okay right now, but he would much rather be in all of your laps. He'd rather have you sitting on the floor. He'd rather be sitting on you. But you are your animal's best advocate. So if you are a handler, then even though it may be difficult, advocating for the dog is the priority, right? It's amazing how many people want to interact with your animal when you have one, and you can't, right? Not everyone can do it. It's just not possible. So, all right, some barriers you want to avoid. Allergies is a huge barrier in this work, and I'm not saying that it's not important, but I think there are ways to deal with it. Some universities have specific animal assisted therapy clinics, which means that there's a room on the university where the dog can go and where the students can go and visit with the dog. So that's a way that, the people who have the allergies maybe wouldn't access that space or wouldn't go to that space when they know that there are therapy dogs present. But all therapy dog handlers would bathe their dog frequently, right? There's something called a shed defender, which I don't think the link will work, but it's basically like a spacesuit for dogs. So it's like a Lycra suit. And some people do use that because, it's a way for them to have the dog interact with people with the allergies are at a minimum. Some risks in this work are unscreened and uninsured animals, unpredictable environments, sudden loss of the animal, right? Illness or death. I've had that experience of, you're in the classroom visiting with students, and then the next week the therapy animal isn't available because they're sick or they're, and how do you process that? It's a complicated thing. Permission is really difficult. Getting permission from school boards or administrators who may not allow the introduction of the therapy animal. I believe that the professional methods listed in this presentation should help. I'm happy to consult with anybody, in this room or anybody else to try to help you to talk to your administrators, talk to your school boards. I have some sample therapy animal policies, that kind of thing that I can help you to kind of improve but I believe the professional application of this is going to make a difference. And time, I talked to you about this before, but handling and caring for the therapy animal takes time above the typical OT practitioner role or schedule, right? So I have some more slides, but I think we're running low on time. I'm going to go through these quickly and then we'll have time for questions. So best practice in this work is that therapy dogs should be thoroughly screened for temperament and health and certified by a reputable therapy animal organization, right? You don't want unscreened, untrained, uncertified dogs. They should not be welcomed into educational environments. And I love animals. I think there's a place for a lot of the animals, but it's not just bringing a dog, I don't know. I consider it a lot more than just bringing a dog into work, right? There's a lot more that goes into it. Therapy dog handlers should have liability insurance to cover their therapy visits, whether volunteering or working. Therapy dogs should live with their handlers and be well bonded. You can assess risk prior to implementation. There's a specific assessment that addresses animal assisted intervention, and the link is provided, I think, in this presentation. So, but these are just some green flags, right? Some of the things that are important. And I have some photos, so I want you to identify, if you don't mind. Look at these slides and see, do you see anything about these slides that might be a red flag to you? I didn't say it before, but in my personal opinion, handling one dog is enough. Handling two dogs would be too much. So you see on the slide on the left, there's two dogs. That person is handling two dogs. There's a lot of people in that room, and I think the leashes look pretty tangled. So I don't know. That's a situation that I certainly myself wouldn't want to be on. But I do see they have the red rope, so it's like they're trying to provide a little bit of distance between the children and the dogs, or at least for safety. But also, these dogs are not well identified, right? You don't know whether these dogs are civilian, not therapy dogs or not screened. That's okay, and not all therapy dogs wear a vest like norm. They might have a bandana on them, and that's fine too. But they should have something identifying them, right? And these on the right, I think. I love this. I think that, children benefit a lot from the presence of animals, but there's no leash on this dog, right? As far as we know, there's no adult in that interaction. So I think that's not necessarily the best idea. Those would be red flags. Green flags. These are green flags because you can see that this dog on the left is on a leash. They're wearing a vest. They're well marked. And there's only a couple of kids in this picture, right? So the dog's not being swarmed. And on the right, there are more children in this picture. This dog is named Ricky, and I actually trained him, and he works in a middle school on Long Island. And his handler is right there. She's wearing green. She's got the leash on him. He loves children so much. I mean, this dog is incredible. He grew up in a preschool daycare. Then he spent time with me and my kids, and now he's working in middle school, and he loves to sit on the kids' laps, and he just is so happy. So in this case, I see it as a green flag because I see his canine body language. I know he's relaxed. Although there are more kids than I might prefer to have around him, it looks like there are some kids who might be waiting to interact with him. So those are some green flags, right? And also the handler, I know can't see the leash, but I know Kate, and I know that she has a leash on him, and he's connected. She's right there observing the interaction, in case something happens. Okay. So some resources for professional education, certification, liability insurance, and networking. I am a member of the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals, and I'm certified in animal assisted interventions. And I think that they're a great organization, pretty new. And they do have some online training. They definitely have certification. They have a lot of opportunities for occupational therapists and all other professions to come together and act and kind of figure out what is best practice, what is the most professional in this field. There are standards of practice for therapy animals. There's a link. Certification, research, and more information is petpartners.org. If you want to find a volunteer handler to come to your classroom or to certify your own pet, those are some links. AAAIP has done a couple of papers about best practices in animal-assisted interventions, and I included a couple of those on the back table, so you can take a look at those if you want on the way out. They're also, I believe they're posted on the website, but if not, you can contact me and I can send them to you. Some more resources. These are some books. I know I'm an ancient person who still loves books, but there are books that kind of discuss this work across the lifespan. So Canine Campus Connection, right, talks about post-secondary opportunities, how animals to help students learn, children, dogs, and education. These are all great resources if you're excited about this work. In conclusion, dogs can be a positive addition to OT practice and educational environments, and it should be considered an empirically supported intervention. More research is needed in the OT field specifically, and it requires any intervention, especially this one, requires careful planning, training, and canine selection. The pathways vary, so there are some key touch points or requirements that I feel like I've said over and over. Hopefully I've sent that home. The trained and screened handler and the animal with liability insurance coverage for therapy animal work. The animal has to be trained, screened, healthy, and well-behaved. I don't know that he's really just demonstrating the well-behaved, but they should have clearly marked apparel. They should have permission for the animal to be in the school on the campus. And, you know, I believe that, and I think I said this, but the handler needs to receive training. And so you've all received some of this training today. I'd recommend if you're excited about this work, look at AAAIP. That would be where I would start. They have some more, you know, specific trainings for professionals who want to incorporate animals into their work. But also ask me. I have some of the future directions. You know, we don't know what's the correct dosage. Is it helpful to have one dog in school full time, even though they can only work a certain number of hours? Is it helpful to have multiple dogs in a school? Is it helpful to have? Is it the presence of the dog? Can you just have? In my office, I have a cardboard cutout of a dog. Is that enough? Is it the actual live dog, or is it a picture of a dog? Because pictures of dogs actually do help lower people's stress also. So is it the ability to interact with a dog, right? Or is it actually just the presence, right? Are some breeds better for therapy than others? How many therapy dogs should be in each setting, right? These are just some questions that nobody knows yet, I believe, and the research doesn't show it. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, as I said, I'd love to talk about this. And one of my biggest goals in life is to get more dogs into schools, because I think it can help students, faculty, teachers, everybody, and it's a way without a huge budget. You know, you don't have to build a new building. You don't have to, you know, there are all these things you don't have to do. That doesn't require a lot of infrastructure, and from the research, it can make a difference in the school climate and the experience of students and teachers. So let me know if you have any questions. Any questions, either online or in person? Yes.
Is there much research on like adults, like at skilled nursing or
Yes.
versus the schools? Is
Yep,
there more?
sure. Yes. So the question was, is there much research about adults in terms of like skilled nursing or other facilities for older adults? And the answer is yes. I didn't focus on those because right now in my career, I'm trying to get more dogs in schools, but there's a lot. And, you know, I can get some for you. I have, you know, I have some pretty good resources.
Specific to OT, or is it more kind of activity related?
I would say both. I mean, I know people who have facility dogs in skilled nursing facilities. I know people who have, you know, facility dogs in inpatient rehabilitation. Kessler in New Jersey has like a ton of facility dogs. And so certainly, I mean, from what I've seen, I haven't seen a place where the dogs haven't made a difference and impact, but, you know, the research doesn't necessarily show that it's impact, you know, but I do, there's definitely some research in older adult, and I can, you know, if you email me, I can provide some of it to you.
Yeah, no, I was just curious if it kind of started there and then now you're trying to kind of make your way.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think so. You know, the evolution has been really interesting, but I think because it's such a interdisciplinary field, it's like the literature isn't kind of consolidated in one place, so it's kind of spread out, which is why AAAIP just started a couple of years ago, and it's exciting to have that, because it means that there's at least a professional association that kind of centers all the different professions. But there's definitely research out there for sure. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Don't have any from online.
Nothing online. There you go. Okay. Wow. Great. Anyone? Yes.
Talked about the liability insurance and some like logistical things you consider every day. What are some of the costs associated with everything that you have to
Sure.
make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, I talked about liability insurance and some of the other logistical concerns. And the question was, what are some of the costs associated with doing this work? And the answer is, it depends, right? I mean, if you want to acquire a dog that's a purebred dog or a a specifically bred dog, then the cost can be extremely high. I consider that I'm a person who would always have a dog anyway. So, having a pet, the cost of having a pet, I don't consider an extra expense. So the expenses would be, there's definitely more grooming involved when you have a therapy dog as opposed to just a pet. There's definitely more logistical things in like, can you bring the dog every day? How do you both do your job and, and care for the animal? But in terms of expenses, beyond, there are maybe a few more requirements to having a therapy animal in terms of like veterinary requirements, grooming requirements. So, and liability insurance, in terms of cost, it's really hard to estimate, but I think it's about, I think it's similar to other liability. It's not like it's, liability insurance that's above and beyond, your general, typical OT liability insurance. I just think, and I think, AAIP has a way to get liability insurance. So that's one of the links that I gave you where you can get liability insurance, but I don't have a quote for how much. I think it costs a lot different. It's different parts of the country, right? But, I don't think it's above and beyond a lot, what your typical liability insurance would be. So I'm sorry, that was like a very wishy-washy answer, but if you already have a pet and you're already taking care of your pet, then I would say it's not huge, it's the additional cost of liability insurance. To me, it's the legwork of, getting, you have a lot more people who want to talk to you when you have a dog, and it's the time of that, and that creates a lot more, that's the time cost, right, rather than the financial cost. Anyone else? Any other questions? All right, well, you have my contact information. Oh, yes, I have another question.
I just had a quick question.
Sure,
If
great.
the handler has to be present in your intervention session,
Yeah.
you
Yes. Well, generally, a lot of settings have volunteers present anyway for other things. And so they would have to go through there's a hospital, or, volunteer orientation. If it's a school, the school volunteer, school orientation process. But yeah, it's not an ideal situation, but also it's like the quickest way to get a dog into the school. So, just like, during COVID made it a little bit harder to get people into the school setting, right? But I would just have my volunteer go through the same process that I would have any other volunteer at the school go through. If they're going to read at the library, they'd have to go through the background check or whatever. So, but for HIPAA in a medical setting, I try to do as much of, I just basically incorporate the dog as I can and incorporate the volunteer as I can. And sometimes, sorry, I don't have a great answer for a medical setting, but for an educational setting, I think that, you would incorporate them as you would another volunteer. Yeah. Is that helpful? Yeah. I don't know, not really, but yeah. But there are settings. That's why I'm saying that the diamond model is not great for all settings. Because, right, if you have an intervention where, having another person there would fundamentally change the intervention, then you can't do that. But I've had people who, like they have dogs in courthouses and a lot of different things. And sometimes the children who are going to go testify because they can't have the dog in court, perhaps they'll have the child visit with the dog before, go into the courtroom and do their thing, and then come out and visit with the dog. So you can incorporate the dog anyway, even though it's not it's not at present during the exact intervention. So that's something you can do. I definitely know a lot of people who incorporate the animal as a reward, so you can get, Lincoln dollars, and the students can spend Lincoln dollars, like they can have some amount of money, a dollar means 5 minutes with Lincoln or something like that. So that's basically through the PBIS model, right? But yeah, there are ways. So